The nature of viruses mean that not only can people have different responses to them, but viruses can change over time as well. The important fact to remember is with all life, if it wants to propagate and continue on, then if you look at a virus, depending on who you ask, they could be alive, while there's also evidence to support the opposite as well. But typically with a lot of viruses, their goal is to not really drop your body, but reproduce and then spread, and to do so would require your body to survive and also be in a viable enough state to venture out into the world to infect others. They take several forms, whether it be a simple rhinovirus that gives you the common cold, or a virus that literally implants into your genes forever, which is going to alter them, as you might guess. But what effects could this have? In today's episode, we are taking a look at a movie called Zombies for Sale, where a bite from a patient zero zombie doesn't really cause him to kind of go after brains, but instead go after cabbage. This, however, is not going to be the outcome of everyone involved, as human survival from the potentially undead requires understanding the immune system and the horde that has succumbed. So let's learn about the viral gene editing abilities, how some are safe from the horror that is old age due to the reversal, and ultimately how another bite ends up being the cure. We kick off things with a reminder that this is an indie film, so you should go support it. As patients then start showing symptoms, according to the radio, a whistleblower emerges about illegal human trials being conducted. Meanwhile, in a field somewhere, someone literally climbs out of a barrel because apparently vagrants and college students were the perfect virus hosts. I'm going to have to guess that this guy had already succumbed during the trial, and so the company carrying out these tests hid him in a barrel to cover up their literal crime. Somewhere else, a car then hits a road spike and crashes as a tow truck appears almost immediately. AAA could never. The tow guy then starts kicking their tires and trying to open the door, creeping out the owners inside. When they resist, he then drops a philosophical gem about meeting Jesus had they crashed just a little harder. Also, have you seen Korean Jesus? Dude's actually like totally ripped. Greg, pull up a picture of him. Why is he so buff? So taking them to a little town called Pungsan, I think it's called. Basically it's just a shady tow shop, which is also a gas station emporium. Getting the repair bill, it is $1,400. That's not towing, that's highway robbery, quite literally actually. A woman with a bunny bag then shows up as Scammer Bro's pregnant wife warns Scammer Bro not to touch her cash or he'll die, which is some amazing business ethics, baby. So Barrel Man then runs into two women out on a walk as he tries to initiate an attack but fails miserably. Turning around, the local younglings are bored as they throw a rock and bullseye his head. It's now a game of keep away with a confused, presumed homeless guy. These kids are absolutely brutal. He then proceeds to run into an alley where a dog immediately squares up and the dog wins. Elsewhere, an older man about to remarry catches another guy hiding money while they're gambling. As tensions rise, he then checks out a busted bathroom and finds a man standing weirdly in the corner, and this is actually pretty much just your standard Seattle bathroom experience. He smacks the guy with a plunger as he sees zombified eyes, gets bit, and then the barrel man escapes. Again, dudes everywhere all at once this movie, and I have to just, you know what, actually, this is a Portland experience. So in the woods, the daughter then buries the bunny just barely above the dirt, like that's why, I don't know why it's a mound, but barrel man then charges, and she responds with a nut shot. We confirm that the zombies actually do still feel pain. But also, maybe wondering, Roanoke, why is it that nut shots hurt so bad? Well, let's talk about it because science. So the point of a nut shot is intrinsic to all males in the animal kingdom. There really is not a species that doesn't feel the same amount of pain, and it's actually by design. In this area, the body has a tremendous amount of nerve endings for different reasons, both good and bad, depending on a situation that you currently find yourself in. These nerve endings, while encountering pressure that is rapid and focused, more so if it's in the area of your reproductive abilities, basically it causes your body to panic. You need to remember that these bad Larrys are essentially an internal organ of your body completely exposed to the outside. Dependent upon the amount of pressure applied and anything else, it is then determined if this is good or bad, but those nerves all have a threshold. The reasoning behind it and why it seems to spread upwards from your abdomen is that the scrotum and abdomen share the same nerves. While a gut punch would be annoying enough, a crotch shot is a game-ending issue. And this is, again, it's all by design. Males typically are competing for females when it comes to reproduction. As a result, fights usually break out between males. Now, funnily enough, amongst males, even in combat situations in our species, it is considered a cheap shot to hit your opponent in the crotch. However, you need to reframe that thinking. Like if they have a handheld or like force enhancer of some sort, nut shots are totally acceptable. Also, if it's you versus a bunch of others, that's also not considered a cheap shot and is acceptable. But if it's like one-on-one and you started it and then you nut shot, yeah, you're lame. Anyhow, so the point is, nut hits are supposed to stop the fight, game over, do not pass go, do not collect $200. The prodigy are under attack should the fight continue on past this point. So as the pain spreads from below and into your abdomen through these shared nerves, this can actually induce a lot of different symptoms. The main one being stop now, as typically people and other animals are crumpled by these hits. The pain is an interesting one to explain, as I've been hit plenty of times in the crotch through different experiences, and it blows every single time. As the nerves then start reporting damage, nausea can set in for some, shortness of breath as it spreads upward the chest, and it can get to your throat basically. You may also throw up as the vagus nerve gets involved to a degree, and the far range effects can continue on because of course they do. And horrifically, did you know this can actually lead to sepsis, which leads to septic shock, which can kill you? So yes, nut shots can kill you. So remember, we are human, rise above the caveman nonsense, and if you're ever attacked by another animal, kicking them in the prodigy holders is a viable form of defense if you're able to accomplish it. Anyhow, moving on. So as all that's happening, another guy, the second brother, then spots his sister running away from something, as then he sees Barrel Man. He ditches his luggage and then runs, but when she falls, he actually goes back for her. Barrel Man is about to catch up when, my god, Tow Bro / Scammer Bro, whichever you want to refer to him as, hits him with a truck, launching him like 200 yards. Man's built different though, and he just survives this. Back at Scammer's house, they then talk about how Barrel Man was highly interested in the sister, heels to Jesus sort of deal. Really, he was just trying to eat her, but this alarms Prego as her brother is just casually saying that, which is not really that cool of a thing. Suddenly, a siren is heard, and the dad is back. The paramedics claim that he was bit by a dog, so they jabbed him with some antibiotics and hope for the best. Great medical care here, actually, unironically. Oh, and that dog is still chasing Barrel Man. One of the things which I think most people may not consider, though, is the threat of a human bite, or even to that point, just pure exposure to human bacteria. As a species, kissing is fairly common, so is sharing your microbiome with someone. It really happens all the time. Also, I'm just gonna go ahead and point this out. Kissing is the sharing of the microbiome. If you're doing anything else with the other end of that tube, you need to stop right now, because that's really bad for your health. And let's just say at one point in my storied career, the age of 18 to 35, a lot of people had antibiotic resistant E. coli. Yeah, gross. Anyways, so we also have a mouth ourselves, so we really not tend to think too much about the bacteria that is housed within, but it is well known that 10 to 15% of human bites become infected. Also, if you punch somebody in the mouth and a tooth cuts your hand, that can become infected pretty easily as well. There is roughly around 500 to 650 different species of bacteria within the human mouth alone, and even if you brush your teeth, which actually, interestingly enough, while not entirely confirmed, there have been a few studies suggesting that mouthwash may cause diabetes. Weird, right? The reasoning behind it is that given your body, if you are male, is around 36 trillion cells, and if you're female, 28 trillion cells, with the body containing roughly 38 to 40 trillion bacteria cells, these cells do have an impact. What happens is the bacteria in your mouth is destroyed by the mouthwash in those who typically will do it about twice a day. This in turn is shown to potentially cause you to develop a risk of developing prediabetes through the disruption of the nitric oxide production within the body based on the bacteria that should be present in the mouth, but it's been destroyed. Nitric oxide helps regulate blood sugar and insulin through either stimulating insulin release or inhibiting it, depending on concentration. So, brush your teeth and floss, but maybe just skip the mouthwash. Then again, truth be told, everything we do on a daily basis seems to disrupt everything about us, from the simple fact that we do things we think are helpful, but really aren't. One of my favorite things to point to is back when I started taking a multivitamin around 19 years old, I started getting horrific migraines out of nowhere. Couldn't track it down until finally I started noticing on road trips when I drank certain energy drinks, I'd also get a migraine. Eventually, I had to start inducing migraines on purpose, trying to figure out if I was just dying or maybe some chemical was causing it. Eventually, I tracked it down to synthetic forms of B12 humanity makes all the time, known as cyanocobalamin. I know specifically that this is it because I have taken just it and induced one hell of a visual aura and then a horrific migraine after that. Switched over to something known as methocobalamin, which is another form of active B12. I believe we also make methocobalamin. I think the natural form is like hydrocobalamin or something like that. Anyways, methyl seems to work because the problem with cyanocobalamin is the cyano portion. My body for some reason reason, may turn that into small amounts of cyanide, which is not great for my brain. Anywho, so if you get migraines as well and you take a multivitamin, try stopping that and see if it, stops the migraines also. So in the camper, Grandpa sweats bullets while talking to his dead wife about going to Hawaii, the trip that they never took because he was always too busy. I mean, you had 2 sons at that point, and it's not like a gas station in the middle of nowhere is exactly bringing in the wands, but let's talk about the fever real quick. So again, given the bite of 87 or whatever, or thing, that is a really stupid joke. We can assume at this point in time, given the administering of antibiotics, yet he is clearly displaying an infection, that this is a virus that has invaded the system. Also, given the speed at which it's operating. Norovirus, for instance, is known to incubate in around 10 to 48 hours. I've definitely had viruses where I could actually track when I was exposed, and then 16 hours later, I end up feeling sick as my body starts crashing out. So this being a virus, what we are about to see is rather interesting for several reasons, but I believe where we should start first is this virus originating in Barrelman means it is near wild type. Seeing that it developed in Barrelman and likely led to his eventual end and his disposal, it would alter the behavior and brain activity of someone who's infected. With Barrelman, control of his body seems to be tenuous at best as his movements are sluggish, and this indicates that neural activity is lower than what can be considered normal, and therefore innervation of the muscles, while still present as it's a physical structure, are less powerful, leading to weaker muscle contractions and less refined movement. And this means less activity in the cerebellum of the brain, with likely the primary motor cortex subdued or depressed as well. Essentially, he can move, but his brain is influencing less control over the body. The question becomes though, how exactly is the dad affected in a way that is not only viable, but seems to reverse his age? Well, we will discuss that momentarily. So, Office Bro gets fired over a text now that he's home. Nice. As the daughter hears something in the bunny barn and then finds Barrelman going berserk over there. Lights flip on and then dad recognizes him as chaos ensues and Scam Bro literally drop kicks him like a UFC fighter, which was actually pretty badass. But due to the hit, Barrelman then gets impaled on one of the rebar and then just pulls himself off. Watching this, they retreat as then they shut the doors and lock him in. Dad realizes that this is the guy who bit him as Barrelman fingers his wound. Terrible phrasing. And then watching Train to Busan, they realize, yep, these are in fact zombies. Pregnant lady then knocks out Grandpa and locks him in the camper. Office Bro starts Googling zombie stats to put together some sort of zombie survival guide, and at breakfast, the daughter comes in and commits a crime by putting ketchup on her eggs, which, my lord, why would you ever do this? As Office Bro then starts explaining zombie biology. Virus spreads, temperatures rise, blood pressure drops. This ultimately results in a seizure that is imperceptible at first, but then starts to get worse, eventually leading to full-on convulsions as the soul leaves the body and then they come back. Meanwhile, Dad's going through apparently all that back out in the camper, but really he's just mostly sweating a lot, and while they argue, the dad actually breaks out, walks in, seemingly zombified, and then sits down like it's a normal Tuesday. They ask how he's feeling as Prego then raises a pan. He goes to shout as then Office Bro knocks him unconscious, and Scam Bro then runs out of the house, chasing him for doing that. Meanwhile, daughter then watches OG Zombie chow down on some cabbage as she tries talking to him and then smacks him when he ignores her. I mean, he's a zombie. Covering up his stylish chest wound, this is kind of important, as it seems that this wound doesn't put him down, which means it didn't appear to hit anything vital, somehow missing his spine, heart, and lungs, but this is what we would classify as likely a sucking chest wound or a hemothorax. Well, I guess that sucking chest wound would be pneumothorax, but anyways, basically when your chest is impaled like this, it's better to leave the object in and get to a hospital because it's blocking air from getting in and also quite possibly is stopping or slowing down the chest cavity from filling with blood. When that happens, you basically drown internally in your own blood, which is not a pleasant way to go. But this suggests two things based on what we will see later. First, the body is continuing to heal even after the infection is present, and second, the body must be running off an anaerobic metabolism at this point, which does raise a fairly interesting idea. Now, the body typically, well, not typically, it does run off an aerobic metabolism, meaning that in order to obtain the ATP necessary to run the body and brain, the cell will undergo cellular respiration, which involves breaking down food molecules in the mitochondria, which is also known as the powerhouse of the cell, to produce this ATP, which is also, that stands for adenosine triphosphate. So here's how it looks. Glycolysis, which is the initial stage, breaks down glucose into pyruvate, producing a small amount of ATP and NADH. Then the Krebs cycle, which is the citric acid cycle, takes pyruvate and then further oxidizes it, generating more NADH, FADH2, and a small amount of ATP. And then the oxidative phosphorylation, this electron transport chain, which is an ETC, uses NADH and FADH2 to pump protons across the inner mitochondrial membrane, creating an electrical chemical gradient, and this gradient drives ATP synthase anomalies, which is an enzyme that produces the majority of the ATP that you get. Without oxygen though, cells may use the fermentation process to generate ATP, but this process is way less efficient and produces a tremendously less amount, but it still does produce it. I think what we are seeing is the mental faculties operating at a lower capacity. The brain itself is running almost in complete power saver mode, meaning understanding the world around him and complex thought are lost, and instead it is just pure instincts. Also, this is like, you might be wondering, well, how does the fermentation process, like what does that even really look like and how much ATP? This is basically when you go for a run and then your legs hurt the next day. That lactic acid is a kind of a waste product, I guess is the best way to put it, that your body has to break down. So it's horribly inefficient, but it does keep things running. So this anaerobic cycle produces less ATP, and as a result of that, everything to patient 0 is grasped well below a normal human threshold. However, the body is, in the meantime, still able to heal wounds because of the, ending, which then prevents him from dropping, which we're gonna see that obviously at the end of this video. But in the washroom, Dad's peeing like a fire hydrant, and back outside, Prego and the daughter note that that's his third cabbage. He's a veggie zombie. Then Perganinant walks over to him and with a pair of pliers just starts yanking all of his teeth out. Meanwhile, Dad finishes the world record pee. The rest of the old men claim he pisses like a young man. And I do not want to suffer the effects of getting older, but it appears to be the only game in town. His wrinkles have vanished and he looks younger. Seeing this, Office Bro still wants to off him, claiming he's infected, but Dad lovingly tarps up Barrel Man instead, and he doesn't get taken out. Groom-to-be decides that he wants to be young too and asks to be bitten, while Office Bro lurks nearby with a drill, seeing a business opportunity rather than a complete detriment to humanity. Back at the camper, more men show up hoping for a bite-based makeover, but Office Bro steals a zombie and drives off until 2 cops pull him over. Cop 1 chats with them because he remembers him from school, while Cop 2 checks the vehicle, and then he finds a tied-up toothless Barrel Man. Office Bro then books it away on foot, but they already know who he is personally, so I don't really think that's going to work out long term. At the station, the cops photograph Barrel Man, teeth are MIA. They think Office Bro did this, but he cracks and blames the pregnant lady, basically his sister-in-law. The dad then arrives, claiming Barrel Man is his youngest son. Okay, then the daughter leads him away while they take the zombie fingerprints for later. They claim sometimes when a newborn is strange, they don't even really register them for one reason or another, more so out here in the sticks. In the barn, daughter ketchup coats the cabbage, but Zombie Boy has no teeth to actually enjoy it. And outside, the family's in full public meltdown mode, having a right proper domestic on the front lawn. Sweet home South Korea, am I right? So the dad then breaks it up as the daughter asks who removed his teeth, and all eyes dart to Prego. Turns out, one of the old men though has dentures, so the day is saved, he can bite once more. They debate on who should actually get bit first, as one geezer volunteers who is several feet away called Snail. For one reason or another, they kind of wait for him for like half a second, but Groom-to-be then shoves his arm through the bitey hole first. They slather it with ketchup, which then gets the attention of patient 0. Then everyone gets in line and gets bit by Barrel Man. The next day, the old guys are now just medium old as Prego finds the cash box unlocked despite a whole song about locking it. You know, the sheriff don't like it, lock the cash box. Anyhow, because they don't listen to the Clash, they find a postcard from the dad saying that he robbed them and then he dipped. Thanks. Office Bro then plans to flee with Barrel Man, but the daughter takes him to the cabbage field instead. Romantic zombie montage incoming, as ridiculous as this is. Trying to teach him to speak, she then takes away his cabbage and he topples on her with a haunted stare that would actually be fairly disturbing. However, we do see his eyes have turned blue, possibly somewhat hazy from the infection as well, and given the rest of his paleness, this kind of seems like potentially there is a pigmentation issue with the cells. But seeing this, Scammer Bro then kicks him off as in the distance, they see a mob is approaching. Office Bro being chased by Prego, and Scammer Bro declares that we're effed. Everyone then hides in the gas station as they're getting mobbed. People demand to be bit now, gotta stay youthful. Office Bro then organizes a proper zombie bite line as more arrive. They even fix up a camper for Barrel Man because things are just getting that good, as then they get him dentures and turn him into a cabbage eating gentleman. He gets a haircut and makeup, and now people think he's a celebrity. The gas station then upgrades its pumps and Barrel Man joins the cleaning crew. A new grand opening photo is snapped and Office Bro's like, wait, why are we still here? Feeding time gets kind of flirty, I guess, as the fam then starts teasing daughter about her zombie crush. So she leads him to the barn as Office Bro then takes a call. At the station, cops run Barrel Man's prints, and there's really nothing in the Korean system about him. Again, the chief explains once again that if the baby's born weird, it just doesn't get registered, which is not a solid policy. Meanwhile, Groom finally ties the knot, and someone else who got bit is now sweating like a whore on Judgment Day. In the woods, the daughter then tells Barrel Man her mom died giving birth to her, and then he leans in as psych, he's also just going for relief. Although, I guess he's attempting attempting to blow it off her, which does suggest maybe a degree that his brain, while grasping ideas more slowly, is beginning to kind of orbit her a little bit. Also, I haven't forgotten, we are going to talk about the process of youngification. It's just we really need to set this whole thing up. So Office Bro then visits the garage to find patient Zero, as in he wants to take him to Seoul, but the daughter covers him up. Already, she has just let him out of there and tells him to just go. He follows her anyway, out into the woods, as then she throws a rock at him and runs off crying. She just really old yellered this man. Office Bro then searches the village yelling for his zombie cash cow, and despite all odds, he finds him in the woods. Daughter's in tears in the camper, as then he gets hauled to the bus station to head to Seoul. But at the convenience store, we get like one of the clearest cut examples of like a Shaun of the Dead moment, which I just got copyright hit for, which is amazing. Basically the whole world is now in full zombie mode. Calls flood in as an outbreak spreads to pretty much the entire area, and given everyone was bitten around the same time, they all start turning at the same time. So the zombies start biting people and spilling out into the nearby towns. The daughter wakes up in the camper, calls out, and finds a zombie is outside, but it's not her zombie. He lunges, but somehow Barrel Man hears her yelling and begins to make his way there. Scammer Bro then sees the threat, and Prego takes the zombie out like a boss. She appears to be the only one who's actually doing anything around these parts. A cop arrives, gun drawn though, shouting arrest for attempted murder, but then the zombie gets back up, goes behind him, and he's just standing there like, oh, I'm just gonna keep not paying attention to this guy, as then he gets bit. More zombies start to flood in. A Scammer Bro then talks to an infected friend. Prego knocks him out with a frying pan again, and then they retreat upstairs, barricade the stairwell, and then draw the curtains, and then turn to break out the zombie survival guidebook that apparently their brother just made. So using his sketches, they armor up like zombie-proof knights looking for the family photo. Nobody looks very happy at all. Real hereditary energy here, I guess. So at the bus station, the chief then wanders while Office Bro hides underneath a bus. His phone rings and he yeets it over on the other side to distract the zombies, and then makes a run for it. Elsewhere, things continue to deteriorate within the town. One unlucky man finds himself stranded atop a telephone pole. That would totally blow, but because the zombies chased him up there, it's probably not going to go too well for him. But back in the town, the infection is continuing to take over. One of the family members stumbles upon a small beat-up Toyota Key truck, which is basically the MVP of every rural apocalypse. Toyota Key trucks, I think, are hilarious, but in a lot of instances, even with these giant trucks out there right now, the bed space is almost about the same. What you functionally have is an enclosed motorcycle with 4 wheels. Sporting a 660cc engine with only 3 cylinders, she produces around 63 horsepower. These things are as much hilarious as functional, and I love them, as with all things Toyota. After I track down like a Hilux, that won't cost me an arm and a leg at some point, I will be securing one of these bad boys next. So as Office Bro is driving, they then pass a curtain covering a building, or at least a small little shack, and behind it, a man who was hiding kind of gets ambushed and bitten because he's just completely exposed. The town's becoming a war zone, and back at the gas station, the group is still layered up in jackets, despite still being inside the building. As the infection continues to creep into everywhere, its effects start to accelerate. The transformation from bitten to zombie is now happening much faster. They flip on the TV hoping to find some sort of confirmation, at least anything, but the news is still just broadcasting as if nothing's wrong. No coverage, no warnings. Prego is close to her due date, only a few days left now, but in this situation, time is a luxury they no longer have. The group then starts thinking back, well, who was bitten first? And then they remember it was their dad. That realization hangs pretty heavy, but there's no time to process it. They then hear movement coming from the stairwell. The infected have breached the building. They retreat back to the furthest room and then make a move to escape out the window. Prego then runs back for the cash box because even in the apocalypse, you don't leave the bag behind, and then gets grabbed. She's able to fight free, barely making it to the adjacent rooftop. The zombies then start breaking through the floorboards inside and closing in. Suddenly, Office Bro arrives in the key truck. He rolls down the window and starts firing fireworks at the zombies. It's loud, it's bright, it's also largely ineffective, and crucially, it's at a gas station. One of the fireworks then misfires inside of the truck. As he bails out, he continues going off, attracting more and more infected with the flashing lights. Then, in the back of the truck, an entire stockpile of fireworks ignites. What follows is a full-on light show, fireworks launching in every direction, lighting up the sky. But this isn't really a celebration, it's really more acting like a beacon than anything, calling the zombies from every direction. Among them, we see the groom from earlier and Barrel Man both drawn into the chaos. Everyone then starts shambling towards the scene, and the whole town is now arriving out there. And they're not really that happy. They know exactly what's causing that. Well, they don't really know. I mean, they're just attracted to the lights, but it is what it is. Hiding nearby, Prego's water breaks, and they're running out of options fast. To escape, Scammer Bro and Office Bro try a risky plan, pretending to be zombies, which actually kind of works, at least for a moment. They fake bites, mimic their walk. It's crude, but it's enough to fool the horde. They then head towards a nearby tow truck, and inside they find behind an infected cop from earlier has climbed atop the vehicle, and watching them from above, they get in, but the truck has no key. Nice going, guys. They try flicking on the lights on and off to do something, but all that does is make the infected notice them. I mean, I guess they're all looking at the lights until they, stop turning on the lights, and then they start attacking the truck. The daughter then bursts out wielding a weed whacker, but it's not enough. She's immediately swarmed and pushed to the ground, but then everything stops. Barrel Man has arrived. Whoa! His presence freezes the horde for some reason. Don't know why. See, he has risen above Alpha Zombie. He is now the Sigma Zombie. Oh, Jesus, that's stupid. Anyways, the officer up top starts getting electrocuted and the lights go haywire. In the chaos, they grab Barrel Man and run, and the gas station is a total disaster. Flames, flares, a wildly flailing inflatable flailing arm tube man, and fireworks still launching into the night. It's like a rave thrown by a pyromaniac. Scammer Bro then remembers where the truck key is as he has a flashback. He then makes his way towards it, and then he steps on a light bulb though because he doesn't look where he's standing, and a sudden baby cry from Prego alerts the zombies once again. This causes Scammer Bro to crash out because that's his offspring, so it's a fairly understandable reaction. Office Bro then yells for him to just get the key and then charges up the stairs with a flying jump kick. Again, absolutely baller. He gets caught for a second but makes it, grabbing the keys. Upstairs, the building is overrun and the infected are now breaching the garage doors. Outside, the camper is under siege as one of the infected manages to squeeze in, only to get dragged out by the returning daughter. She's armed again, and this time for real, revving the weed whacker and taking down a zombie one by one as the rest of the group deals with their own battles. Scammer Bro throws the key and he's immediately swarmed and pulled back into the horde. Office Bro then starts the truck, which is now dragging the camper as the daughter tries to get Barrel Man inside, but he's just standing there. The infection is starting to overtake him again, I guess, and then he starts convulsing as next the beast is coming inside him, phrasing, as he starts yelling at the rest of the zombies. Office Bro then slams into a gas pump, jacking up the truck, and everyone gets sprayed with gasoline in the process, and somehow Scammer Bro survived the entire ordeal. He pulls himself back into the vehicle. That baby is going to have a wild family origin story at this point, and then as they escape, the daughter is forced to leave Barrel Man behind. She watches from the truck crying as the gas spreads. The tow truck setup is barely functional, rocking wildly as they pull away, as Barrel Man then turns back towards the station, whispering the daughter's name. He's still himself, I guess, somewhat, but the crowd sees him as not one of them anymore, but as something else, mainly because zombies don't talk, really. They then in turn attack him, which means their understanding of who's infected and who isn't is really not based on the idea that you produce a certain scent or the virus really knows itself. It really is just how you move and behave, meaning really anyone can pretend to be infected to survive. Dropping the lighter, the fire finally reaches the fuel lines and the building detonates in a massive explosion, taking most of the infected with it. The survivors then drive through the ruined town with their lights off and everything is decimated. Martial law is now in effect as it has spread further as radio chatter talks of riots, quarantines, and an emergency unfolding across the entire country. Scammer Bro in the back is pale and sweating as Prego realizes he's infected. Office Bro then stops the truck and jumps out, and looking into the tunnel ahead, they see a familiar face against all odds. Their father has returned. He's back from Hawaii, just casually walking through the tunnel into this nightmare. So the question is, why didn't the dad transform? He was the first one bitten. Well, what happened? Let's discuss. So as with all viruses, there are different types of responses. In fact, if we head back to the wonderful time of Homo erectus, when they were making their push out of Africa into Europe and Asia to become Homo neanderthalensis, a massive dying event took place. The reason is viruses around this latitude existed that didn't within Africa, or were at minimum much less prevalent. As a result, when Homo erectus came into contact with these mRNA viruses, their bodies were less equipped to maintain the balancing act concerning immunological response. And this would lead to their bodies to overreact to the infection. However, this would leave the ones that survived able to reproduce, which would then pass along those mutations that prevented their bodies from over or underreacting, allowing for, this to be displayed within their bloodlines, making them more adept at dealing with viruses. Interestingly, the virus of 2020 showed that certain individuals had a mutation in their genes that allowed for them to respond less aggressively to the viral presence. This allowed for them to clear the infection more effectively. If I remember correctly, I think it was a loci on gene 21, basically calming the response that was thought to come from Neanderthals that was given to sapiens because, sapiens from a union of, Neanderthal and sapiens during cave fun times. But see, people, for some reason, I guess it kind of, you think of strength being a good thing, but they believe a really strong immune system is the best thing to have. But really, you want an immune system that responds appropriately. Having the strongest immune system in the world really means that it will overreact and end you in the process, which is not ideal for your survival. You want an immune system that at first can keep the virus at bay using the innate immune system, giving enough time for the adaptive immune system to activate, which usually happens within 2 to 3 days where your body produces antibodies. The These antibodies are critical to explaining this infection. First thing we also need to establish is that the group of older men who were bitten were all experiencing the same symptoms at first. As the bite allowed for the virus to enter their bodies, we can assume that this virus is in the saliva, which wouldn't make it rabies. As much as I want it to be so, and as much as you're hoping it's so, it is unlikely given how this is interacting with the genome. Rabies does not interact with your genome. As it spreads into the body, pyrogens from its presence would then get sent to the hypothalamus, telling the body to raise its temperature as the body then begins fighting the infection. However, the virus is not just moving around the body and that's it. Instead, it is entering the genome of a person and then appears to be encoded. mRNA viruses will sometimes be encoded into the genome of a person as the virus contains reverse transcriptase. And this takes the viral genome and then splices it into the actual DNA of a person. It should also be known it's not just reverse transcriptase, but it also has integrase. And if you take something like HIV, it also has protease as well. And really, this is how HIV works. It's kind of interesting because 8% of the human genome is thought to be ancient viruses that have infected and then got passed along at some point in time. And interestingly, these viruses may also disrupt being infected with new viruses by preventing the viruses from being able to invade a cell. Anyhow, what sort of virus do I actually believe this to be though? Well, given what we will talk about with the genome here in a moment, I believe what we're seeing is the first human infection with a megavirus. Megaviruses contain significantly larger genomes compared to the viruses that we standardly see today. Megaviruses are also really, really old. We find them in the permafrost, not really old. They're old by human standards. You would say 10,000 years is like old by human standards, but we find them in the permafrost. But essentially, you're talking about 1.259 million base pairs in megaviruses, specifically the one known as, I believe it's pronounced megavirus chilensis, versus the 2,000 base pairs with something like a circovirus, which is still pretty standard. This increase in information means more genes, which means more information coded with them. But what would those do? Well, it's clear the virus Barrel Man is infected with was a test to see if possibly we could use a megavirus in a therapeutic way, and the virus may have had a natural propensity to ensure its host's longer-term survival by potentially implanting genetic material to alter the functionality of a cell. With the infection by a megavirus, several things could have been changed. First, the metabolism may have been altered in this way by affecting the mitochondria, allowing for it to switch to an anaerobic propensity. Along with this, the cell itself may have become infected with a different form of DNA polymerase inspired by the virus's own genome. This may have potentially become better at repairing cells. But what would make them younger? It could be that within the megavirus, information is encoded that allowed for telomeres to relengthen. And just in case you want to know, telomeres are the DNA at the end of the cell. They were considered junk DNA for a really long time. Every time your cell divides, a little bit of this gets cut off, but we now know that there are actual specific genes that are within telomeres that are pretty important. So anyways, this allows for a person's cells to functionally age backwards, I guess you could put it. Now, new genes would need to be added to allow for the repair of the cell to operate at a younger capacity than it once did, and this would have to change. But the process presents first and foremost as a decrease in inflammation and cells operating more energetically. And this allows for the prostate to operate correctly within older men, allowing them to pee or piss like a young man. Over time, these cells would reach a point where likely around 20 years of damage was undone to the genome. But it's clear the virus doesn't stop there. Once the genome is repaired, this makes the person younger, but their infection continues. If you are immune from this stage, such as with the father, then you keep your youngish mind intact. If you are not immune, well, then the disease continues to progress. And it appears the body may become inundated with this virus, which then begins to disrupt the genomic functioning and expressions of the genes that should naturally be occurring. This led to a lower energy level and the mind to revert back to a more animalistic pattern of behavior, attacking and biting other people, infecting them with this megavirus. It seems to be that the standard for humanity is to end up in this predicament, but as with all forms of human life, there are mutations that may or may not protect people. Take the Delta 32 allele mutation in Central Europeans. Essentially, these people survive the bubonic plague while everybody around them just continue to drop. But interestingly, it makes them resistant or outright immune to HIV as the cell markers created by the Delta 32 allele now grow within the cell membrane, or it isn't poking out enough for the HIV virus to actually latch onto. Now, HIV has other ways of entering a cell, so I really wouldn't test this out if you have this mutation, but the point is that it does make people seemingly at least highly resistant to it. So we can assume then that the dad has some sort of infection that may make his cell more adept at detecting something operating within the nuclear envelope of his cell. cell. This may actually cause his own enzymes to excise that information, leaving the beneficial mutations but stopping the virus from continuing on, leading to humanity's infection pattern. Now, what could be the outcome of this? Well, it's clear his body is able to prevent the virus from altering his genome to the point of complete degradation of the mind, and his body is also able to produce antibodies to the infection, which are then, excreted through his saliva. As a result, this will show what we are about to see here in a moment. So a radio broadcast then announces South Korea is under emergency quarantine. The message instructs any immune individuals to report to disease headquarters. Their dad is apparently one of them. He's immune. And then the camera pans out. In the distance, a wave of infected pour through the tunnel, but something's different now. 6 months later, the city is a wasteland. Scammer Bro is no longer infected. He has been cured, and then lining up the infected, Barrel Man is also cured. Somehow, the father has learned to bite the infected to cure them. Yeah, that's a sucky job, but apparently it does work. There has to be an easier way, is all I'm saying. And with that concludes Zombies for Sale, except also as the credits roll with a montage showing how Barrel Man survived it all, the father's infection is no different from anyone else's. He just possesses mutations that allowed for his body to prevent the infection from progressing. By biting others, he exposes their bodies to the antibodies that he has produced, and this may give their own bodies enough of a foothold in the ensuing window of infection to appropriately respond to that infection. Also, why not just inject spit into the infected? That way you don't have to bite them. Anyways, this suggests the virus is preventing dendritic cells from performing their jobs properly, with the virus preventing antibody formation in the first place. So finally, let's answer. Are they dead or alive? I believe they are infected, mainly because the impalement a Barrel Man received, he was able to essentially heal from it. So as a result, which don't get me wrong, that would be a hell of a healing ability, this would likely mean that the virus has a hand in causing mitotic abilities to increase as normal healing factors I don't believe would have been able to properly seal that wound of that magnitude, which then shows the genome of the person is being affected, allowing for cells that divide from this point, and actually they in turn have a younger genome signature. In fact, Barrel Man could have been in his 40s when he was infected, but now he looks like he's in his 20s. So therapeutically, it worked, which I imagine whatever company was conducting these experiments, this is what they were going for during their trials. The issue is the megavirus prevents the immune system from functioning correctly, leading to a runaway effect after the body is brought back down to a younger level. But anyhow, I want to thank you guys for watching. What do you think of my discussion over this? Let me know down in the comments. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, Roanoke Tales, and Roanoke Games link, where I live stream in the description. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. First, huge thank you to our astronaut, Bananas Are Epic. Thank you, my man. Next, I thank our astrophysicist, Death Dancer. Thank you as well, Prometheus. And also like to thank our scientists, Dakota23, Invictus Echo, Metric System, Ocean Gate was a cover-up for an anglerfish attack, Official Texan, and Stutz. Now, the rest of my patrons, you guys are absolute ballers, and I do appreciate your support. It goes along towards helping out, so thank you. But all right, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next one.